we have reached the halfway point of the regular season. So we begin the second half of the NFL regular season with my Week 9 predictions. Last week I had my best record of the season, 13-2. I could have gone 14-1, but Eddie Pinheiro just couldn't come through for the Bears this time. And the other game that I missed last week, I thought the Panthers were going to be able to pull off an upset against the 49ers, but Kyle Allen had his worst performance as an NFL starting quarterback, throwing 3 interceptions. And the 49ers, they were able to move the ball at will on the Panthers defense. Although 13-2 is a good record after all. So I'll take it. Best performance of the season. Got to keep that momentum going. So, as always, we begin my picks with the Thursday Night Football game. And this week, Thursday Night Football features the San Francisco 49ers and the Arizona Cardinals. Now, this is one of the layups of the week. The 49ers, they are first in total defense, only giving up an average of 224 total yards per game. The 49ers, they also have a lethal running game, while the Cardinals, on the other hand, they are banged up at the running back position. David Johnson isn't expected to play in this one, and neither is Chase Edmonds. So it makes sense why the Cardinals, they traded for Kenyon Drake at the trade deadline. But that's not going to be enough for the Cardinals. It may help out their running back problems for the short term, as far as just filling a void at the running back position, but it's not going to do anything in this game at all, because the Cardinals, they're 29th in total defense. And they give up an average of 130 rushing yards per game, and when you think about San Francisco's lethal running game, this is an easy game this week to predict. And this is also going to be Nick Bosa's revenge game. And I remember I got a comment on one of my mock drafts this past offseason that if the Cardinals, if they passed up on Nick Bosa and went with Kyler Murray instead, they're going to regret it. And their regret is going to be coming back to haunt them Thursday night. I think Nick Bosa has himself a game defensively. And I think the 49ers, they win this in convincing fashion. I'll be surprised the Cardinals even score more than a touchdown in this game. I'll give the Cardinals 1 touchdown. I think San Francisco wins. I'm going to say 45-7. Next, we have a game in London, the Houston Texans and the Jacksonville Jaguars. Now, this was one of the games this week I had a hard time predicting. I was going back and forth. Because on one side, you have the Houston Texans. Deshaun Watson is in the MVP race. The Texans right now are 4th in total offense. However, a negative to the Texans right now. J.J. Watt is out for the season. It seems like every single season, J.J. Watt suffers a season-ending injury. And the Texans didn't end up trying to trade for anybody at the trade deadline to kind of fill that void for that missing piece in J.J. Watt. So when I look at Jacksonville, I think Leonard Fournette might be able to take advantage of that missing piece on that Texans defense. And the Jaguars, they did come close to beating Houston in week 2. If Leonard Fournette would have converted that two-point conversion run, then the Jaguars, they would have beaten the Texans in week 2. While Jacksonville, they're used to playing in London, the Texans, they are not used to playing outside the United States at all. So I went with Jacksonville at first, but then I took a look at it, and I look back at week 2. Carlos Hyde was able to move the ball against that Jaguars run defense, and I think he'll be able to do that again. I'm going to take Houston, but this is going to be one of the 3 games this week that will go either way. So I'm going to take Houston, but Jacksonville could easily end up winning. Next, we have the Redskins and the Bills. The Redskins are 30th in total offense. So the Redskins, they are struggling right now. There's a lot of quarterback issues with Case Keenum, and Haskins is potentially going to start, but is even ready to be at the NFL level at all. That's my main concern. Although they do have a few more days of rest than the Bills do, the Bills did get a reality check last week against the Eagles, losing 31-13. But the thing that's going well for the Redskins right now is the Bills, they also don't have the best offense either. However, what's going to be the issue for them is Buffalo is third in total defense. And I think this Bills offense will be able to move the ball on this Redskins defense. Because the Redskins, they don't have a good defense either. It's just not a good team for the Redskins. I think the Bills, they win this easily. I think that they took their reality check against the Eagles last week. And I think they're going to rebound this week. I'm going to take Buffalo huge in this one. Next, we have the Vikings and the Chiefs. No Pat Mahomes for the Chiefs again this week. Can Matt Moore be able to win a game for the Chiefs? While the Vikings, after a 2-2 start to the season, they are on a 4-game winning streak. And Kirk Cousins has gotten a lot better at the quarterback position in these last 4 games. He's completing 79% of his passes for 1,262 passing yards, 10 touchdowns, and only 1 interception. So Kirk Cousins has been stepping up lately in the Vikings offense. And Dalvin Cook is also going to be another weapon in this matchup. I think Dalvin Cook will have his way with the Chiefs defense. Because in the last 4 games, the Kansas City Chiefs defense has surrendered 561 rushing yards in the last 4 games. So I think Dalvin Cook will be able to exploit that. And I think the Vikings will win this matchup in Arrowhead. And next is a matchup I don't want to predict at all, but because I predict every single NFL game every week, I have to. Both these teams, they are just mediocre, and mediocre feels like a more respectable term to describe these two teams. One team is tanking for Tua Tagovailoa, keeping their eyes on the prize. Dolphins fans want to go 0-16. Even some Dolphins fans that I follow on social media, they want the Dolphins to go 0-16. They want Tua Tagovailoa, maybe even Joe Burrow, depending on how the rest of the college football season plays out. And the Jets, well, you can consider them tanking, but they already have a win against the Cowboys, so they don't have a chance at the number 1 pick. But if they had the number 1 pick, they'd probably go with Chase Young out of Ohio State. Which, speaking of that, I am considering doing a mock draft later this week. No promises though, but it's something that I'm considering doing. If I have time for it this week. But I'm going to pick the Jets to win this. Although the Dolphins may actually end up accidentally winning this, because they took a 14-0 lead against the Steelers on Monday Night Football last week. So we know the Dolphins are capable of being competitive against some teams. But I'm going to take the Jets because I think the Dolphins, they just had their eyes on the prize. Although they did trade for Aqib Talib today at the trade deadline. So maybe they're trying to build some veteran pieces around them for the future, which I think it's a chess move. But the one thing I want to address, just for a little bit at this moment, I feel like head coach Brian Flores is being set up. I feel like he's being set up to go 0-16. They fire him at the end of the season. And they're going to hire somebody that you won't expect, but I'm expecting it completely. That's right. I think the Dolphins are going to end up hiring Jim Harbaugh for next season. I think if this is like the magical year for Michigan football, where they end up beating Ohio State, something Michigan has not done for a very long time now, and they end up demolishing whoever they end up playing in a potential New Year's Six bowl game, this could be the year where Jim Harbaugh, he gives the NFL another chance. And I think it is quite possible. If not the Dolphins, Jim Harbaugh will be an NFL coach this season. Well, next season. So mark my words, Jim Harbaugh will be coaching an NFL team next season. Next, we have the Bears and the Eagles, a rematch of last year's wild card game, the known as the double doink game. So the Bears offense, it's lethargic. And for Bears fans, it is lethargic. I'm surprised the Bears didn't trade for another quarterback at the trade deadline. I'm surprised they didn't end up trying to go for Andy Dalton today when it was announced that Ryan Finley would be starting at quarterback in Week 10. I'm surprised they didn't give that a go. I'm surprised they didn't give Marcus Mariota a chance because Ryan Tannehill has won the last 2 games for the Titans at starting quarterback. I'm even surprised they didn't try trading for Teddy Bridgewater. Although the Bears probably wouldn't have wanted Teddy Bridgewater anyway. So I think the Bears are going to end up taking a quarterback in this draft in April. I think Mitch Trubisky, I feel like this was the biggest reach in NFL draft history. But if you were to have a big game, it would be this game against an Eagles secondary that is just mediocre and lackluster. Although the Eagles do have some confidence going because they got back on the right track this week by winning against the Bills. And I'm going to pick the Eagles here because just because the Bears, they have a good defense, it's being wasted by a mediocre quarterback in Mitch Trubisky. So I'm taking Philadelphia because I can't trust the Bears' offense whatsoever. It's completely lethargic. Next, we have the Colts and the Steelers. The Steelers, they beat the Dolphins on Monday Night Football, but yes, it was the Dolphins, to reiterate. And the Colts, they got a lucky break last week against the Broncos. Adam Vinatieri got redemption for a missed extra point earlier in that game. And the Colts now leading the AFC South. But the big concern for the Steelers is the status of James Conner. The most recent status of James Conner is he will play in this game, but he will be limited. So that means Trey Edmonds is going to get the majority of the carries, which I'm also surprised the Steelers maybe didn't try trading for another running back at the trade deadline, or they may end up they may end up signing a free agent running back at some point this week. But Trey Edmonds is going to get the majority of the work this week for the Steelers. And for the Colts, if the playoffs were to begin right now, the Colts would have a first round bye. But I'm going to pick the Steelers because even if James Conner is going to be limited, I still think the Steelers have a good chance of winning this one. Because I think Mason Rudolph, I think he's just going to get better later on the season goes. So I have the Steelers winning this matchup and keeping up with the Ravens in the AFC North. Although that will probably be one of the picks that I get incorrect this week. I can already see it happening now. Another pick that I think I could get wrong this week is this one between the Titans and the Panthers. The Titans are 2-0 with Tannehill at quarterback. While Kyle Allen is still going to be the starting quarterback moving forward, while Cam Newton is still in the middle of his rehabilitation. I do like the running back battle here. Christian McCaffrey, an MVP frontrunner. Maybe not the frontrunner, but a frontrunner. I think Derrick Henry may be able to move the ball. He may be able to run between the tackles in this Panthers defense. I think after the performance we saw from the Panthers defense last week, I think Derrick Henry could easily have a big game. But I think the Panthers will bounce back. I think this game goes in either direction. I originally went with the Titans in this one, but I changed my mind to Carolina. So I'm going to take the Panthers and hope I make the right decision with this one. But I'm probably going to be wrong. Next, we have the Lions and the Raiders. The Lions, they seem to be an underrated team. Matthew Stafford has shown some improvements in the Lions offense this season, but they don't really have the wins to show for it. They came pretty close against Kansas City. They probably and arguably should have beaten Green Bay, but the officials and their decisions sometimes. They were competing really well with the Vikings until the very end. So the Lions, they could have about 2 or 3 more additional wins to their record this season. However, I think the Raiders, with them competing with the Texans last week, I think they will be able to take advantage of the Lions' defense that's giving up an average of 420 yards per game. So I'm going to take the Raiders to win this one. This is another wild card game that's up in the air. But I'm going to take Oakland. Next, we have the Tampa Bay Buccaneers and the Seattle Seahawks. For Tampa Bay, Jameis Winston is always going to have a question mark, constantly turning the football over. However, the Buccaneers, they seem to march back into that game last week against the Titans. Evans had a big game. Godwin is having a good season. And I think Godwin and Evans may be able to have their way with this Seattle secondary, because this is the same Seahawks secondary that gave up 460 passing yards to backup quarterback Matt Schaub last week. Even though I would consider stats that you get against the Falcons with an asterisk, because a big reason on the offense and defense side of the ball, a part of the reason for this 460 yards allowed against Matt Schaub last week is because a lot of that was in garbage time. Quite a chunk of those passing yards were in garbage time. But at the same time, the Seahawks, you can argue and say they've skated by in 5 of their 6 wins this season. I wouldn't necessarily count Atlanta skating by, but it's possible the Falcons could have won that if Matt Bryant would have made 2 field goals in that game. I think this is a game the Seahawks win, but this is probably another game where they have to skate by. I'm taking Seattle, but probably in a close game again this week. Next, we have the Browns and the Broncos. The Browns, are they overhyped still? Yes. However, Nick Chubb had a big game against the Patriots defense. Just a couple of fumbles is what really defined that game. A lot of rushing yards, but those 2 costly fumbles in that game. And the Broncos, 3 of their losses this season should have been wins. 3 times the Broncos have lost on a last-second field goal, against the Bears, against the Jaguars, and last week against the Colts. There's 2 bright spots to the Broncos team. They're 4th in total defense, but they give up 109 rushing yards per game. Close to 110. And I think with Nick Chubb being 3rd in the National Football League in rushing yards, I think he'll be able to exploit that Broncos run defense. I'm doing something I rarely do, but I'm going to pick the Cleveland Browns to win against the Broncos, because I think this is just a battle of 2 overhyped teams at this point. Next, we have the Packers and the Chargers. The Chargers won the game last week between the Bears in the battle of 2 lethargic offenses. And the Packers, Aaron Rodgers has the Packers firing on all cylinders right now. And I think that continues. I think Green Bay is going to move the ball at will against the Chargers. And the Packers, it'll be another Sunday, another win for Green Bay. I think Green Bay is the favorite to represent the NFC in Miami for Super Bowl 54. And I also think Aaron Rodgers is my personal frontrunner for MVP. Because the Packers' only loss this season is against the Eagles on Thursday Night Football in a game where they should have had better offensive play calling inside the 5-yard line. Because they were inside the 5-yard line twice and came up with 0 points both times. So the Packers should easily be undefeated right now. And now we have the Sunday Night Football matchup, the undefeated New England Patriots and the Baltimore Ravens. So the Ravens, they are coming off a bye week. which means they've had extra time to prepare for the Patriots. While New England has the second best defense statistically in as far as total defense is concerned, but they have the best defense arguably. They have the most turnovers in the NFL with 25 total, and they lead the NFL in turnover margin at plus 17. But part of the reason why the Patriots have had success on defense so far, which I'm not discrediting it in any way, shape, or form, but part of that is when you look at the offenses the Patriots have faced this season. They rank as follows in total offense. 32nd, which is the Jets twice. So they've played the worst offense in the National Football League twice. 31st, 30th, 28th, 24th, 20th, and 19th. So out of their 8 wins this season, none of them have come against top offenses, not even the top half of the best offenses in the National Football League. So the Ravens, this is going to be the best offense to face the Patriots so far this season. And it's on prime time, where the Ravens, they've had a lot of time to prepare for this matchup. Although Bill Belichick is the greatest NFL coach of all time, you could argue that, you can debate it. He's the best coach in all of football right now, even better than Nick Saban. But the blueprint to beat New England, I think, is there. Your best shot at beating New England is running the football. And I think Baltimore will be able to run the football with Lamar Jackson at quarterback, with Mark Ingram at running back. I think running the ball against the Patriots is your best shot. And I think the Ravens do that. And I also think this is also going to be one of those games for New England where they don't play at their best. So, I am probably going to be the only content creator that will predict this. But the Ravens will upset the Patriots on Sunday Night Football. That's right, the Ravens, second best offense statistically in the National Football League. The best offense New England will face at this point in the season. Baltimore pulls off the upset. And finally, we conclude with Sunday Night Football, the Cowboys and the Giants. And Daniel Jones has shown some promise this season so far, although not really many wins to show for it. However, Saquon Barkley, that's a big piece to the future of their franchise. But the Cowboys, they have looked inconsistent this season. They have a loss against the Jets. And they have had a couple close losses. The Packers loss looks a little bit cleaner, considering they were down by so many in that game at some point. But this is a divisional rivalry. The Cowboys and Giants are used to each other. The Cowboys have had the Giants' number in recent memory. They've had their number for about the last, at least ever since Dak Prescott's second year in the National Football League. So the last 3 seasons now, the Cowboys have had the Giants' number. And I think that continues. I think the Cowboys win this huge, but the Giants, they may be able to keep it close for a while. But I think the Cowboys pull away in the second half. So those are my picks this week. Like, share, and subscribe. And I will see you next time.